Someone's asked me to explain the 2300 days of Daniel 8:14, and honestly, this is where a lot of interpretations go off track. But thankfully, the Bible gives us a very clear prophetic sequence, and it leads somewhere far more important than most people realize. To understand this prophecy, we need to look at how apocalyptic prophecy works. Daniel's 2, 7, and 8 all follow the same sequence of events, each one repeating and expanding on the one before it. And if we come to Daniel 7, we get a clear understanding of this sequence. First, we had the reign of Babylon, then Medo-Persia, then Greece, pagan Rome, which led to 10 divisions of Rome, and finally the Antichrist, which is the little horn power. And we were told that it would continue for a time, times, and the dividing of time, which is 1260 years and ended in 1798. But after this, we have another element in the sequence, the judgment. We read, "The Ancient of Days was seated, the court was seated, and the books were opened." That there is the judgment scene. Now make sure you remember that sequence, because as we now come to Daniel 8, we're going to see the exact same thing. Only this time we start with Medo-Persia represented as the ram. Then we have Greece as the he-goat. From here, we see 4 horns arise, which represent the 4 divisions of Greece. And out of these, we see another little horn, which represents Rome in its 2 phases. First, it's pagan Rome conquering horizontally toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. But then it begins a vertical pursuit towards heaven, and it casts down some of the hosts. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host. At this point, the little horn fully aligns with that of Daniel 7 and represents the Roman Catholic papacy. Now, just as in Daniel 7, we expect to see a judgment scene follow, and it does, only this time it's worded a little differently. The question comes, how long will the vision be concerning the daily sacrifices and the transgression of desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? And the answer, for 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. What does the cleansing of the sanctuary mean? In order to understand this, we must go back to the Old Testament to see how sin was dealt with through the sanctuary system. The first step is shown in Leviticus chapter 4, where we read, "He shall bring as his offering a kid of the goats, lay his hand on the head of the sin offering and kill the sin offering." This symbolized the transference of sin from the sinner to the substitute, but then the priest would take the blood representing the life of the substitute and apply it to the sanctuary. Then the priest shall put it on the horns of the altar, or sprinkle it 7 times in front of the veil. Now this was done daily, symbolically transferring sin into the sanctuary, defiling it. But once a year on the Day of Atonement, the sanctuary would be cleansed of all of the accumulated sins of Israel. Leviticus 16:16 tells us, "So he shall make atonement for the holy place," the sanctuary, "because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel and because of their transgression." Then the high priest would symbolically place the sins upon the scapegoat, which was led out into the wilderness, forever separating the sins from the people. But here's the key, only the sins of the repentant were in the sanctuary. Unbelievers had no part in this process, and this means that the cleansing of the sanctuary only involves the professed people of God. And now we could ask, what about those people that turn away? Ezekiel 18 and verse 24 gives us the answer. "But when a righteous man turns away from his righteousness and commits iniquity, all the righteousness which he has done shall not be remembered. He shall die." And so, on the Day of Atonement, God judged his professed people, whose repentance was genuine and whose was not, who would have their sins blotted out forever, and whose sins would be returned to them. And this here is what Daniel 8:14 is about. The cleansing of the sanctuary involves the judgment of the righteous, those who have had their sins sent to the sanctuary through Christ. Now, if we go back to the prophetic timeline, this judgment takes place after the 1260-year reign of the little horn, which is after 1798. So it can't refer to the earthly sanctuary because it ended at Calvary, when the veil was torn from top to bottom. Instead, it points to the heavenly sanctuary of the new covenant, where Jesus now ministers as our high priest. But Christ came as high priest of the good things to come, with the greater and more perfect tabernacle not made with hands, that is, not of this creation. The earthly sanctuary was just a shadow. Heaven is the reality. But wait on a minute. Does heaven really have anything in it that could need to be cleansed? We have the answer here in Hebrews 9 and verse 23. It was necessary that the copies of the things in the heavens, that is to say the earthly sanctuary, should be purified with these, the blood of bulls and goats. But the heavenly things themselves, the heavenly sanctuary, with better sacrifices than these, it required the blood of Christ. Even the heavenly sanctuary needs to be cleansed, not because there's actual sin there, but because it contains a record of the sins of God's people, just as the earthly sanctuary symbolized. Now, as to the timing, we've already seen that the judgment takes place after the reign of the little horn, which is after 1798. But thankfully, the Bible is very specific about the date that this begins. When we come to Daniel 9, we see that there are 70 weeks which are said to be determined, or kathok, which is to say cut off from something else. Now, for something to be cut off, it has to be cut off from a longer time period. Now, in this case, the only contextually longer time period is that given in Daniel 8, the 2300 days. And what this means is that both the 70 weeks and the 2300 days have the same starting point. And Daniel 9 tells us that the starting point is with the command to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, a command given by Artaxerxes in the year 457 BC. From here, we need only go forward 2,300 prophetic days, which are 2,300 years when we apply the day for a year principle, just as we have to do for the 70 weeks. And that then brings us to the year 1844. And in that year, the Day of Atonement fell on October 22. And so now we have the time that this judgment began. October 22, 1844, the judgment of the righteous began in heaven. So Daniel 8:14 is about Christ's work in the heavenly sanctuary, judging his professed people and preparing to finish his work of redemption. The judgment has already begun. Are you ready?